The fourth element of the model is support. Now, the important thing here, I think, is to recognize that teacher learning is just like any other learning in a highly complex area. I think we've learned that as teachers, we don't actually often act on this, but we know that we can't do the learning for our learners. Although when the pressure is on and when the tests are looming, we still try to do the learning for our learners, don't we? Hence the old joke about schools being places where kids go to watch teachers work. I always say to teachers, if you're going home at the end of the day more tired than your students, the division of labor in your classroom is wrong. But we still revert to type, I think, occasionally. So in the same way that teachers cannot do the learning for their learners, leaders in schools cannot do the learning for teachers. And there's two responses to this. One is to say it's hopeless. Teachers can't change. And there are many politicians and policymakers who believe that teachers can't change, and that's why they're so invested in getting new people into the profession. At the other extreme, there's this idea of any idea that a teacher has is a good idea. So you have this sort of let 1,000 flowers bloom, and you get things like brain gym. And I don't know whether your school has been infected by the VAK virus, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. I mean, it's great fun, that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any impact on student outcomes, as far as we know. And if there were no ideas about what we could do to help children learn more, then I think there'd be a justification for trying those things out. But actually, given that there's quite a strong literature that assessment for learning does make a big difference, I actually think it's self-indulgent to allow teachers to do stuff that may or may not make a difference when we know that it's stuff that will. So these two extremes won't work. What we have to do, what leaders have to do, is to engineer effective learning environments for their teachers. You have to create a school culture in which everybody understands that teachers should be developing. And Stephen Covey, the guy who wrote this book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, has got this notion of servant leadership. The job of a leader is actually to act as a servant to those that they lead. You're going to improve your children's results in your classroom by helping every single teacher in every single classroom do a better job. So what we need to do to create the right conditions, we need a commitment from teachers to the continuous improvement of practice. I want from every single teacher in the profession a commitment that they accept the need to get better every single day. Not because you're not good enough, but because you could be better. And I think our role model should be Tiger Woods. I think it was in 1999, he won the US Masters by a record 12 strokes. And what did he do? Straight away afterwards, he changed his swing. Best golfer on the planet by a record margin, and he thinks he's not good enough. Not because he wasn't better than everybody else, but because he thought he could be even better. So I think we need this commitment to a continuous improvement in practice and a willingness to focus on those things that the research evidence suggests are likely to make a big difference to our students. What is needed from leaders then is creating expectations for the continuous improvement of practice and ensuring that the focus stays on those things that will make a difference, providing the space, the time and dispensation for risk-taking and support for innovation. And I think this notion of risk is very important, because when I talk about these ideas to teachers, one of the things I often hear is they say to me, what you're asking us to do is very scary. Yeah? So I've been thinking about risk, and I came across quite an interesting case study of risk amongst the doctors at Great Ormond Street Hospital. And I think you might find this interesting, either as a case study in itself or as a way of actually talking to other people about the need to take risks. A number of babies are born every year with what is called transposition of the great arteries. So the aorta should come out of this side of the heart, and there's a genetic malformation and it comes out to the other side of the heart, which means the aorta is actually getting blue blood rather than red blood, deoxygenated rather than oxygenated blood. The traditional procedure has been to insert a little baffle in the heart to divert some of the blood that was being pushed into the pulmonary artery into the aorta. It was called the Senning procedure, and it was reasonably effective. The early death rate from babies who were given this procedure was about 12%. So, 7 out of 8 babies actually survived the procedure, and for those who'd had this procedure, there was reasonable life expectancy. The average life expectancy was about 46, 47 years. So it was an okay procedure. But the doctors still felt that there was a bit of a kind of an inelegant fix to the problem. There's great interest in actually correcting the problem properly by, if you like, correcting the plumbing, by cutting the aorta and cutting the pulmonary artery and reattaching them where they should be on a 2-week-old baby. So this was called a switch procedure. And when they started implementing the switch procedure, the death rate in the first month of life rose steadily. So in the first 100 or so operations that they actually tracked using the traditional sending procedure, 12% of babies failed to survive the procedure. So most babies did survive. When they started learning how to do the switch procedure, the death rate rose from a base rate of about 12% up to about 25%. So more babies were dying as a result of this procedure. But as the doctors got more and more expert, the death rate dropped radically. And now, as you can see in this chart, after the 273rd case, there was not a single death in the next 30 or so cases. So while the doctors were learning this new procedure, the death rate rose from 12% to 25%. So that was quite a brave risk to take, wasn't it? And the outcome is that now the procedure is almost faultless. And for those people who now have the switch procedure, life expectancy is practically the same as for people who don't have any heart problems at all. And this last chart here, the blue line shows the life expectancy curve. It's your chance of surviving one more year depending on your age currently. The blue line shows the normal population. The red line shows those who've had the switch procedure. The green line for reference is those who had the sending procedure. And the life expectancy for those having this new switch procedure is almost 63 years. So a really radical improvement in life expectancy. But these doctors took a calculated risk. And the death rate did actually rise for a period while they were learning how to get better. But if those doctors at Great Ormond Street can take a chance to make things better when the stakes are human lives, then I think teachers can take a risk in actually improving their own practice because the stakes aren't anything like as high as these doctors were facing.